Let's go.
Hey everyone, and welcome back or welcome to my channel. Today's topic will be on the story of Bvndit and what has led them to disband 3 years into their career. I actually got into them a bit early on just because of Chungxiao, and their debut was pretty alright to me. But dramatic era and everything else after that though, absolute chef's kiss. It really didn't take long before I would low-key think that they were gonna be the dark horse of K-pop. I mean, they were slowly rising in attention, but yeah, things happened and now they're no more. The plan for this video will be to go straight into the different factors that contributed to their disbandment. I won't really go through their career history, but the order of these factors will kind of be relatively chronological. So yeah, before I start, I'd appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to my channel. Without further ado, let's start off with the first factor. Bvndit debuted in April 2019 with a single album of Bvndit Be Ambitious and a title track of Hocus Pocus. This debut did alright, but it didn't really capture too much general attention. I want to say that the song was kinda safe, which could be good and bad. Like, it was safe enough where it would be general public friendly, and so relatively more palatable, but also it didn't have any distinguishing factors that made them unique. I mean, what was low-key kinda trippy, but not majorly impactful, was Bvndit's name and even their title track name of Hocus Pocus in comparison to the sound of the song. I mean, the contrast between the two in hindsight is kind of funny. But yeah, what didn't help with Bvndit's era was the fact that competition was a little bit rough. Not like with Purple Kiss and Classy, where rookie groups were dominating the scene, as 2019 was still ushering the new fourth generation. However, BTS would make a comeback with Boy With Love literally a day after Bvndit debuted, which was a bit of a yikes for them. I feel like Boy With Love was that era that really solidified their rising success, and it just exponentially pushed BTS to the top. And then when you think about how K-pop comebacks are created, there's so much prep work and teasers to garner the era's more attention. So even just the days before leading up to BTS's release, there must have been so much hype and some attention taken away from Bvndit's debut. In saying that, there is a niche audience of people that only listen to girl groups. However, Twice would also make a comeback a week before Bvndit's debut with Fancy, and that's when I gotta say, damn, double homicide. Because if you were there for 2019, then you would know how impactful Fancy was. So the combination of both BTS and Twice, I mean, that's just unfortunate timing, which no one could have prepared for considering how in advance comebacks and debuts are prepared. And so for the most part, they just kinda had to deal with it unless they were gonna waste their money and resources to delay their debut, which MNH wouldn't have been able to considering they were and still are pretty small as a company. This didn't stop them though, as they would continue to release more music throughout the year. However, the next factor would be seen through each release and was pretty influential in their future. Low album sales have kind of been consistent with Bvndit. I'm not an insider within the K-pop industry in terms of knowing what could be considered bare minimum to stay afloat to just make comebacks without constantly being in debt, but the album sales achieved by Bvndit were on the low end from what I've seen in comparison to what we see within groups in general, but also with other Nugu groups. Album sales are a relatively impactful factor, but also not the end-all be-all. However, since Bvndit haven't been doing anything to diversify their income source, the significance of album sales become a bit more important. Each comeback achieved less than 5,000 Korean sales, but there was a slow increase in album sales, as the most recent release of Venom saw the biggest growth in first week sales of 2,200 sales compared to their previous peak of 950 sales. Still, this was kinda not enough overall and could be a justifiable reason for MNH to be hesitant with comebacks. However, we bring up the same question when groups aren't doing the best, in that at how much loss should a company take, or even a smaller company like MNH, how much should they be taking in order to continue developing a group that either might not be thriving or thriving but at a really slower rate like Bvndit? I mean, developing a group doesn't always translate to eventual success, or it just might not be enough success to be justifiable. I mean, once again, there were obviously risks associated with debuting groups that MNH had to consider when going through with debuting Bandit, so they weren't completely oblivious about this. This kind of should imply a bit of responsibility from MNH to take some losses in terms of throwing money to promote the group. But yeah, I feel like this whole company's justifying maybe putting in less work to eventually disband them is only valid if they actually put in the work through their management towards the group, which MNH has done barely anything. I can't completely fault MNH's incompetence though, as the next external factor seems to be on par as a main contributing factor for Bandit's disbandment. The pandemic was rough, not only for Bandit, but the whole K-pop industry. I mean, we saw the disbandment of many groups because of the impacts of restrictions, which made many smaller companies lose out on some income opportunities while also not being able to completely adapt to what can still be offered during that time. MNH was on a similar boat in that they were starting to thrive a bit more with Chungxiao's success in 2019, but ultimately they were still not successful enough to be considered any bigger as a company. As a result, Bandit became limited in what they were able to do while restrictions were in place. The pandemic era also coincided with Chungxiao's first album of Querencia, which if you were there to see that whole era, there was a lot of massive investments that they were trying to action off. And so the prioritization was all on Chungxiao to hopefully reap the benefits of them going all out for her. Not saying that it had the best promotions, but the Querencia era saw a lot of music videos, some promotions, and a lot more other initial plans that they were now trying to adjust for. Then to add to that, they would unexpectedly redo the promotional cycles 1.5 more times within that era. The first one wasn't explained well, but Chungxiao kind of confirmed that the long gap between Play and Dream of You wasn't planned and that they had to re-promote more songs to once again build up the hype for the ultimate title track of Bicycle. The 0.5 would come from Chungxiao getting COVID, which would delay the remaining releases by a month. This wasn't a bad regard because MNH should always prioritize their artists' health. However, this was just another unexpected delay that MNH would have to further incur some costs. But yeah, this left Bandit in a slight limbo as all MNH could do was promote their moneymaker of Chungxiao, considering she had enough of a pre-established fan base and interest from the general public to help MNH survive through this era. The only positive from this pandemic era for Bandit was that at least they got a comeback during the early stages of 2020, which is kind of sad, but this moves us to the next factor, which kind of intertwines within this pandemic era. Despite the potential justification for limited activities during the pandemic, this doesn't excuse the fact that the initial justified hiatus would become a prolonged questionable hiatus. This basically became the swaying factor for many fans in regards to their switched perception of MNH. No longer were they the best company who had been lifting and helping Chungxiao thrive, with Bandit to rise next. They were now seen as all the same with the other companies, as we saw no signs of Bandit getting any comeback announcement while the K-pop industry began to operate once again. A lesser known group going a long time without a comeback can kind of be understandable. Not the best, but if they had no one in their company besides that group, then I could see how a company may be fresh and have no experience in what to actually do. However, MNH had Chungxiao and thus experience in managing a K-pop artist. As a result, this kind of made no sense in how they were not able to apply the same methods to managing Bandit. I mean, even the compensation for lack of comebacks was low to minimal, as they rarely dropped anything extra for fans while they waited for them. I mean, they abruptly ended Bandit's Monday radio show, uploaded a group reality show on their YouTube channel with it leading nowhere in terms of properly getting a comeback, and then Sungun would join Girls Planet 999, which would get the bare bones of promotions from MNH's side to help advance and support her. By the time they did make a comeback in 2022, they had lost most of their momentum from a general audience perspective, with most of their attention coming from a pre-existing fan base. It felt like they were essentially re-debuting again as a result of this long hiatus, and so if their Hocus Pocus debut was a bit of a yikes in terms of competition because of BTS and Twice, the new cohort of dominating rookie girl groups would make their comeback feel relatively non-existent. So once again, bad timing. And now this is just getting so unfortunate for Bandit. However, this could have mostly been avoided if the next and final factor did their job properly.
Venom, Venom, yeah.
Based on the sectioning of each factor within this video, you can probably tell where all my gripe is coming from. I mean, starting with the overall lead up to Bandit's debut, I just always wondered why MNH thought it was a good idea to debut a new group. Despite liking the group and it being a good way to not completely rely on one person and instead diversify their income, if we actually considered the condition of MNH during 2019, Chungxiao was the only artist within the company, and Rollercoaster was making noise, but this was her first song to kinda hit mainstream for Korea. I know Gotta Go would be released before Bandit's debut, but finalizing a group's debut takes a long time. So despite the public announcement in early March 2019, they would have been basically preparing to debut them way before Gotta Go's success. So I feel like they wouldn't have really known how well Gotta Go was going to do if Love You was the previous comeback. But yeah, based on this, it was pretty interesting to think that they could manage another group. I mean, they were starting to see some more success from Chungxiao, and so they had barely scratched the surface of them being at their limits of promoting an artist. What didn't help as well is the fact that Chungxiao would voice her frustrations with the company later down the line, which if the moneymaker says something, then it just doesn't look great for the other artists within the company. I do want to make note that during a live with Chungxiao, she confirms that there were so many changes in MNH that she barely knows anyone, which indirectly confirms the change in CEO that has been discussed in terms of reasons for the sabotage of Chungxiao. This is seeming to have happened after Bandit's debut, but before 8turn's debut, and might explain the questionable management. I mean, the whole switch-up might be potentially further validated by the fact that Bandit's whole music team got scrapped. Despite only having 3 mini albums, the first 2 albums followed the same formula of an intro produced by Vincenzo, a song done by the well-known collaborators for Chungxiao, 1 Mozpik song, 1 Park Usang vibey song, then 2 other songs. That was just kind of the formula of each album, and so by the time they made a comeback after their long hiatus, it was just all new faces. The reason I say all of this, and am emphasizing the CEO change, is because I theorized that once the new CEO came into MNH, they had a new direction in mind where Bandit would not be in the picture and Chungxiao would no longer serve them. As a result, that might explain why in June 2021, we would see the announcement of global auditions to form a new boy group. This would eventually form 8turn, which kind of vibes because 8turn is pretty decent, but they kind of served as MNH 2.0 and might explain the new era of artists that they were planning to prioritize. The announcement of 8turn would also, however, backfire a little, as a major leeway that fans were giving MNH was the fact that they were justifying MNH's fumble as them financially not doing well as a small company. However, to see the eventual debut of 8turn, it just became more clear that MNH was being intentional with just neglecting Bandit, as opposed to making a final decision in whether they want to keep the group or not. Sounds kinda harsh to cut Bandit even earlier, but considering they weren't promoting like that, it could have been a better time for them to just pivot and find a new place a bit quicker. However, this was not the case, and so we would see all these factors pile up, leading to the eventual disbandment of Bandit in November 2022. Final thoughts. Overall, Bandit is a prime example of how you can have such insane talent, a good blend of different and distinct vocals, pretty legit music, and yet still be unknown. The combination of MNH's lack of investing into the group combined with bad timing of their releases just left them constantly overlooked, with not enough people getting hooked to support them strongly. As of November 2023, we've seen Ian release a collaboration single and Jungwoo signing with the company to be a musical actress. It'll kind of be interesting to see where the others go and whether any of them want to try out idol life again. Regardless, Hopefully, we can see them reunite in any form and maybe even perform some of their songs, even if it's a small snippet. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching and let me know your thoughts on Bvndit overall, any other reasons you may think caused their disbandment, and your favorite song, era, or memory about them. For me, it's gotta be the two Park Woo-sang songs that he made for Bvndit of My Era and Children. Top tier and just such a vibe. But yeah, I thought my next video was going to be on the produce curse, but I'm not sure anymore in terms of how I want to go about it. I do have other videos in mind, but I just don't know which one to prioritize. Video ideas that I have in mind are the different outcomes and treatment of ZB1 and Kepler, an analysis on the rebranding of Fromis9, not sure if rebranding is the right word, why post-GFriend is not having the same impact as GFriend, or just an era analysis on certain comebacks, with Tomboy by G-Idol kinda on my radar at the moment. But yeah, if you're interested in any of these video ideas that I've mentioned, then please like and subscribe to keep up to date, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!